Masechta Horayos Daf Gimel Amud Aleph, starting from base 7 to base 10 lines from the bottom. We had learned that the Chacham hold a yach she'asa, a yach that followed the Rav of Bezdin, the din is going to be chayiv, not like Rabbi Yehuda. And where do they want to learn it out from? So they learned it out from the same pasuk of Basesa, but they learned that the miyat hakol that sinned are chayavim. Each one is chayiv akar mechatas because Bezdin doesn't bring up halam dava. If the Reva called sin, they'll be potter from being a chatas because Bezdin does bring a par for them. Comes the pasuk Ma'amaris and teaches us that, but if the Reva called sinned on their own volition, meaning it was a shikigas maisa, even if they all sin, they're going to be chayiv because it wasn't al pi haydas Bezdin. So, but it's mashma, okay, but Asesa comes to tell you, by a yachid, a miyut hakol that sinned b'shikigas ma'is is chayiv, because we say, because even when they followed the Hira Bezdin, they're also chayiv. So you wonder who says that when it says that the Bezdin doesn't bring, because Bezdin doesn't bring a par, you're saying, the dik was because Bezdin doesn't bring a par. That's why the yachid is chayiv. Who says because Bezdin doesn't bring a par? That's why the yachid is chayiv. Dilma loyhein, not the yachid brings v'loy Bezdin. Nor does Bezdin bring a par helam. Both won't be mechuyev. Says that's impossible. Yachid. So my area. What's the difference between kalhada ruba lechiyuva? Why are we searching a mucker? For if the Rev Tzibur did Shigigas Maisa, did an Aveda Shaloi Alpi Hoiraz Bezdin, we're searching a market why they should be Chayiv. Why aren't we searching for a miyut? If a Yachid is Potter, when he does Alpi Hoiraz Bezdin, so we should search a marker when a Yachid doesn't do Alpi Hoiraz Bezdin, that he should be Chayiv. Why aren't we searching for that? Lav Miklal, is it not? Because the miyut B'Hira, Kaimaloi, the Mechayiv B'Hira. It's obvious because it was pashut that if a yachid does not do al pi haydas Bezdin, he's going to be chayiv. Because even if he does do al pi haydas Bezdin, he's going to be chayiv for sure. He's going to be chayiv if he doesn't, and that's why we didn't search for a yachid when he doesn't do al pi haydas Bezdin. Where do we see a mark? It's chayiv because it's self-understood, and that's why you only look for a ruba, a reiv tzibur. We said we know if you do al pi haydas Bezdin that potter. So where's the marker if they do it? Shaloi al pi haydas Bezdin that they're going to be chayiv. And now we're going to say it in more words. We should have searched first for miyut when they don't do b'shikigas ma'isa. When they don't do al pi haydas Bezdin, we should have searched for a marker where they can say chayiv. Because if they do al pi haydas Bezdin that potter, so we should have searched for a miyut when they don't do al pi haydas Bezdin that chayiv. And then go to the next stage. Where is the market for a ruba to be chayiv l'chiyuv b'shikigas ma'isa when they don't do according to haydas Bezdin? Only is it then not. From this that we didn't search for a marker that for a yachid who doesn't do a b'shikigas ma'isa where he doesn't do a haydas Bezdin, we're not looking for a marker where you learn it's chayiv. And only at the end we're only looking for a marker for a reiv tzibur l'chiyuv b'shikigas ma'isa to be chayiv if they don't do al pi haydas Bezdin. Shma mina is a raya because miyut b'heira chayav mei b'kizba b'usira that a miyut a yach that follows the haydas Bezdin was chayiv. So for kol shekin if they don't do al pi haydas Bezdin is chayiv and shalei b'heira b'shikigas ma'isa chayav for sure. If they did a shalei b'heira b'shikigas ma'isa not al pi haydas Bezdin they're going to be chayiv. That's why we didn't search a marker. So from this that we didn't search a marker, we understood that we didn't have to search for a marker because this shita, this brayso held that why we didn't have to search for a marker because even if a yachid did al pi haydas Bezdin, he would have been chayiv. Mechti Lama Akuktan says the Gemara Tavayu Stamim Tnan. Both braysos were learned as stam side the brayso where it says nefesh achas ba'asoisa, and then this last brayso that we just spoke about. How do we know the first brayso is Rabbi Yehuda and the last brayso is Abanon? Because say the reverse. Maybe the first Braisa is the Rabbanan and the second Braisa is Rabbi Yehuda. So Gemara, man shamat le the Dorish miyut kai gavna. Who's the Tana that goes with this shnit? You make miyutim from single words, nefesh, achas, ba'aseisa. Rabbi Yehuda. Where do we see that? The Tanya Rabbi Yehuda Iman. We learned in the Braisa. Rabbi Yehuda says on the pasuk, he uses zois, he, and the hey as miyutim. For what kind of miyutim? These three miyutim come to exclude three categories of kabbanis psulim that if they were placed on the mizbeach, which normally are never taken off the mizbeach, but there are three categories that are. So since we found that Yehuda Befedish uses this shnit, so we have to say the nefesh achas ba'aseisa that beraisa was Rabbi Yehuda. If you want, I can tell you another reason why this second beraisa cannot go according to Rabbi Yehuda, because adayin ani ayma. It says in this beraisa, loy matzis mukvisla. Adayin ani ayma loy matzis mukvisla. We cannot establish Rabbi Yehuda because we learned in the hemshach of the beraisa reiv hakol. If the majority of the kol sin, Bezdin is the one that brings the pahelam dava. Rabbi Yehuda, if it follows Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Yehuda says Tzibur the Maisi. Tzibur is the one that brings the par. Bezdin loy, and Bezdin doesn't. It's not that we learned in the Mishnah. Rabbi Yehuda Ema Shiva Shvatim Shachatim Avim Shiva Parim. 7 Shvatim that had sinned, they bring 7 Parim. So it's mashma the Shvatim bring it, not Bezdin. Now the Gemara is going to bring a shita that holds like Rabbi Yehuda, This Mishnah that says a yoch chasa al pi bezdin is pat mechatas divrei Meir follows the shita of Rabbi Meir as well, who was masking with Rabbi Yehuda. Chamaim yoch chasa v'einos bezdin chayiv. Cham hold a yoch that did v'einos bezdin chayiv. In fact, you want to my Rabbanon. Where do we find this machliks between Rabbi Meir and Rabbanon? So Gemara the Tanya that we learned in the Braisa. Hoidu bezdin paskin betolas for also, and they did according to the psak. Rabbi Meir says he's pater, and Chacham says he's mechayim. So what does it mean? Who did according to the psak? It's ambiguous. It says also, who's the one that followed the psak, or the erroneous psak? Maybe you're going to say Bezdin themselves followed their own erroneous psak. My time they're Rabbanan Mechayiv. What's the reason they're Rabbanan Mechayiv? Apar halam dava. Tanya we learned in the Braisa. Yochel hayro Bezdin, Bigam also Bezdin. I would have thought that if Bezdin paskin, then they also follow the psak that they should be chayiv apar halam dava. Later comes the pasuk and says hakol they also has to be the kol and did it. Maisa they did the Maisa, meaning Maisa the Aveda. The Maisa of the Aveda is totally kol. Is in order to bring a pahalam dava, the Maisa has to be done by the kol. And the Hirah, the psak, the meaning, the pahalam dava is not brought only when the kol follows the psak of the bezdin. So no, it's nishken raya. Ella Hiru bezdin vasarev hakol. Really, we could say. Really, we can say so. We can't say that it's talking about that the Bezdin did the Aveda. So what's the case? Rather, it's talking about a case where Bezdin did the Aveda. I mean, Bezdin gave the Psak and Rebbe Kol followed. So, in fact, my time, they have Meir the Pater. Why would have Meir said that the Bezdin is parted from Paralam Dava? It's a normal case that the Bezdin is Chai Paralam Dava. That's the case that the Torah is talking about. Rather, it's talking about a different machlokes completely. Bezdin made a psak, and only a miyad of the kol followed. And this is what they're arguing, not about the payalim dava, about the yochid being chayiv following the psak of the Bezdin. Rabbi Meir holds yochid b'hidos Bezdin pater. That if a yochid follows the hidos Bezdin, is going to be pater. And the chachamim so sheyochid but Hiras Bezdin Chayiv, that a Yach that follows the Hiras Bezdin is Chayiv. So we have an ayah. Rabbi Meir is the one that says Yach that follows the Hiras Bezdin is part of like Rabbi Yehuda. So the Gemara slugs it up. Amar Papa the Kuli Yalmud. Beside Rabbi Meir's Hayd Chavim, Yach Jas Hiras Bezdin is going to be potter. And like our Mishnah, Ella. This Mishnah is a different machlik. Is Bezdin Mashal Le'Rev to come the gate. Let's say there was half the tzibur or even a miyut of the tzibur that's in. And together with Bezdin, it makes it a raiv. So, do we add the tzibur to the raiv that the Bezdin should have to bring a pahalam dava? Mas of a Bezdin mashlim le raiv tzibur. One holds that Bezdin completes, makes it into raiv tzibur, And the Chachamim Mechuyev Pahalam Davar. Masava Ein Bes Mashlim L'Reiv HaTzibur. And Rabbi holds that Bezdin is not Mashlim to the Reiv HaTzibur. If you want, I'll tell you the Kavanah of Rice is like this. Hayru Bezdin Vasan Rubi Shal Kol. If Bezdin Paskin, and most of the Kal did up follow the words. Man, who's the Tana that was brought in? That side the tzibur that had sinned brings a pahalam dava, and side Bezdin brings. And Meir says no, the only one that has to bring a pahalam dava is the Bezdin. Anybody say me if you want, I can tell the machleks of the rice is shevet shas beidos bezdinoi. A shevet that there the Bezdin Paskin and the shevet followed the psak. Then that Bezdin has to bring a pahalam dava. Man chachamim Rabbi Yehuda, the Tanya that we learned in the Brayso is shevet shas beidos bezdinoi. Shevet chayiv, that shevet is going to be chayiv pahalam dava, and Rabbi will say it's not because you need the Reiv HaTzibur. Everybody say if you want, I can tell you it's another machlek. Again, shechatu shisha 6 shvatim ve'im rubi shal kol, and then the majority of the kol. Oy shiva af pisheina rubi shal kol, or it's 7 shvatim which are reiv shvatim but not rubi shal kol. Masnis mani who's the Mishnah following? Reb Shimon ben Elazar, the Tanya that we learned in the Brayso. Reb Shimon ben Elazar Mishmei Reb Meir. Reb Shimon ben Elazar says from the name of Reb Meir, chatu shisha, if 6 shvatim had sinned ve'im rubi shal kol, and they are the majority of the kol, or shiva, or if it was rubi shel shvatim, afal pisheina rubi shel kol, chayov, they're going to be chay pahalam dava. And Rav Meir himself will say, no, you need both. You need reiv shvatim and reiv kol. Zaki Baram Ravasi wants to know who is included in the reiv hakol. So it has to be, we go after the Rebbe that live in Eretz Yisrael. It's never like it says in the Pasuk by the Chanukah Space HaMikdash to Shleima. It says, Vayash Shleima Vayisahis HaChog. Shleima, that time, made a Yom Tov. Ho Yisrael Yimai Kol, Gadam Levay Chamzah Nach Mitzrayim. And all the Yidden were with him. Meaning, from the Gvulim of Chamos of Eretz Yisrael, Nach Mitzrayim, which is another part of the Gvul. One is Tzafin. I'm not sure if one is Tzaf and one is Darim, but they were the Givulim of Eretz Yisrael. And it says, it says all the Yidden were with him, the Kol Gadol. Why do you have to now say, why do you have to bring down those people from Hamas till Nach Mitzrayim? He said all the Yidden. What do we need? No. Only those that are living in the Gevulis of Eretz Yisrael, only those, like Levay Chametz is the Tzafin of Eretz Yisrael, like I said, and the south of Eretz Yisrael is Nach Mitzrayim. Only those within the boundary of Eretz Yisrael are called Kol. But those that are Chutz La'aretz Kol are not called Kol. So we only go according to the Reiv Tzibur who sin in Eretz Yisrael for Bezdin to bring Pahalam Davar. In fact, what a Pshita Davar is a Pashta Zach, that if they did merubim, and then v'nismatu, and then it became less. So let me explain. First of all, it's Hainu Pluk the Rabbi Shimon Rabbanan. That is the same machlokes Rabbi Shimon Rabbanan. We have a machlokes between Rabbi Shimon Rabbanan that if a pashta person sinned, and then he became aware of the sin when he was anointed as the Kohen Gadol, or pashta, that was a pashta Kohen, and he became anointed as a Kohen Gadol. Second case is a pashta person sinned and he became aware when he became anointed as a nasi or melech. So the kabbanas change. So here also, here it was merubin. Most of the people sinned, so Bezdin was already chayiv apar halam dava. But when did they become aware? From the sinners, a lot of them died and it became a miyut. So then they're not chayiv. So this is the same machlokes Rabbi Shimon Rabbanan. What is that machlokes is? Rab Shimon says you go after the Yediyah, after the Yediyah, so after the Yediyah, when he became a Nasi, it's a different carbon. Or after the Yediyah, when he became a Kohen Gadol, he's a carbon as a Kohen Gadol. Here also, after the Yediyah, was already in a Smatu. So you shouldn't be Chayv a carbon. So the Gemara says, how about what's if they were the minority who sinned, and then from those that didn't sin, a lot of them died out, and now the miut became the majority. Are they going to be chayva karma or not? Does Rab Shimon Rabbanan argue there too? Says the Gemara, Rab Shimon does basa hayidiyah. Rab Shimon who follows goes after the yediyah mechayiv. In such a case, he's a mechayiv halam dava because it became a rayv. Mishas yediyah. When it came the time of yediyah, the miyah turned into a rayv. So therefore, Yechayiv come. Rabbanan does the basachatos. Rabbanan who go after the shas ma'isa of the sin, partly because at the time of the sinners were a meal. Or perhaps there's no machlekes of Shimon Chachamim in this case, because in this case there was no chiyuv of a carbon to begin with. It was a miyut, and then it became a roiv. Okay, so since there was no chiyuv, but Mashen came in the machlekes of Shimon, and the Rabbanan over there, it's talking about that he did sin. There was for sure carbon chayiv, just what type. But over here, there was maybe no carbon at all. What's going to be the din? So if you want to have a tizbera, could we then compare the two cases? When did Rab Shimon say that? In which inyan did Rab Shimon say that we go even also after the idea to be mechayv achatas? Where it's in the same time. The yediyah and the chet happened at the time of the chiyuv chatas. But if the yediyah was after the actual sin, if it was a yediyah alone, loy chata, without the shas achet, misham atlei. Did we learn that Rab Shimon says he's chayiv? Dim kain. If Rab Shimon says we only go kefi shasa yediyah, so the Kaila Mashiach and the Nasi that they became aware only after they were appointed, Laisi Kahashta, let them bring a carbon. If he holds that you go after the yediyah itself, let them bring a carbon like what they are now, like Kohen Gadol would bring a type of a chatas from different behemoths as a Kohen Gadol versus a hedget, or a Nasi versus a hedget. But we know that Rabbi Shimon doesn't say that. Rabbi Shimon says he's part of the Gamri because it's two different types of sins. I mean, two different types of karbanis, so it's like different sins. You need both. You need b'shas ma'isa, the chet with the yediyah. And that's why Rabbi Shimon was part of the Kaim Mashiach, or a pash, the person that became a Nasi or a Malach, because since the Dinei Karbanis had changed, so you cannot be Mechayiv any carbon. So by the case of Ma'at and Shemesabru, they were Pater L'Chatchila. They're going to, so according to everybody, it was Pturim. Everybody held that L'Chatchila was Pater. V'shas Chatam Haya Pturim. Take. If it was the reverse, if it was first a roiv and then became a miut, then it will be taka tali the machlekes of in Reb Shimon and the Chachamim. Reb Shimon says you go after the yediyah and you be pater, and the Chachamim say you go by shasachet, and the shasachet they're chayiv. Yibayilhu the base of Majlis the Shayl Haydu Bezdin paskin on a certain chayil of muta. Vasami Takol, and part of the call the Aveda. Chaz Bezdin and Bezdin retracted and said, hey, we made a mistake. Shuv Haydu, and then they passed again with the same erroneous mistake, and Adamiyah did the same. Mao, could we add the two miyutim and make him to Reva Kol, and the Bezdin should be Mechiva Pahalam Dava? Even the Shtei Yediyas, should I say, since it's two separate Yediyas, Loy Mitztarif, we're not going to combine them together. Since both are Chaylev, Mitztarif, we're going to combine them. It's the same Isur. So since it's the same category of Chaylev, Mitzvah, that's why it gets combined. Says the Gemara, so we have another suffix. How about Miyut? A Minari did Bechil Shal Akeva, the fats on the insides, and Umiyut Bechil Shal Gabe Dakin. So two different types of Chaylev. What's the din? There's two categories of chaylev betrei krayikasi, and we learn out these two chaylevs from different psukim. I should say loy mitztaref. I shouldn't combine them together. I don't know, perhaps given the hidui chaylev, since they're both still chaylev mitztaref, I should combine them together these two miyutim and make it into a reiv tzibur, and this Bezdin should be mechuyev to bring up Ha'elam Dava. Imtim Tzalema Shem Chelev, who we go according to the name, it's called Chelev, and therefore mitzvah if it's combined. How about miyud b'chelev? A minority sin in the Isser of Chelev, or miyud, and another minority did the Isser of Dam, Isser Dam, meaning they ate Dam. What's going to be the din? Are we going to combine the two? They're completely two different types of Isurim. The Kiva and the Ein Surim Shabbos, since the Geder of their Isurim are not the same, I should say, shouldn't be combined. Or perhaps Kiva Shava, the Kabbalah Shabbos, since they bring the same Kabbalah, Mitzvah, I'll say they do combine. The Kabbalah Shava, since you're going to say we do combine because the Kabbalah Shava, Mitzvah, if it gets combined. How about Bechelev, that Miyut Bechelev, a miyut of the people ate the Isser of Chelev, or miyut, and another miyut of the people followed up Bezdin, served idols. Mao, could we combine them? Here, not the Isser nor the Kabbanas are the same. I don't know, perhaps we'll say, since in both cases the Isser of Chelev and Isser of Yitzchak are equal, that if they both were done b'mezid, it's karisu. Mitzaref, I'll say it does combine. Take or the shilas remain for Eliyahu to answer. So the yeshiva, the Beis Medrash had a shilah. Haydo Bezdin gave a erroneous psak. Shechelav muta v'aseh miyut hakol. They said chelav was muta and miyut of the kol did. Meis I say Bezdin, and that Bezdin died. Am Bezdin acher v'chaz v'haydu. Another Bezdin got up and they paskin also it's muta. And then another miyut did it. So do we say that it's a reiv tzibur that sin api Horayos Bezdin, and the last Bezdin has to bring a Ha'elam Dava? So it's going to halin the mandama Bezdin Maisi. According to the one that says Bezdin is the one that brings the Ha'elam Dava later bailach. That's not a shaila, because the halesnu that first Bezdin is not here. So how can you say that the second Bezdin should be? The second Bezdin was only a miyut. The first Bezdin not here. It goes according to the Mandama who says, who brings the Ha'elam Dava? The Tzibur. So you have a Reiva Tzibur. Might. Tzibur HaKai, you have here Tzibur. I don't know, perhaps, since you did the whole Bezdin, the Hirobinan, since we need that the first Bezdin should have retracted that from them toes, that's what we need, and we don't have it, take, Abba Rabbi Yonason, may it Dayanim that Shayash Lahidus, Hans Dayanim sat down to Paskin. They're not going to be chayiv na Ha'elam Dava until all the Dayanim Paskin. Should never, like it says in the pasuk, V'im kol adas yisol yishgo. If all of adas yisol will make the mistake, until all the Dayanim make the mistake, kol adas yisol, meaning all the Dayanim will be mishtativ in the erroneous psak. It's reasonable to say that the Cholatei Kula Kaimelan Sherube Kikulei. And all over the Torah Ruba is Kikulei. But over here, Ksiv Kol Adas. So since it says the word Kol, Afilu Hey Meya Dayanim, it's not going to be enough. Only all of them have to paskin. Tanam, we learned in the Mishnah, the Gemara on this Mishnah, Hayru Bezdin paskin beheta by mistake. And one of the Dayanim knew Shato that the Dayanim made a mistake. Talmud even a Talmud who sits before them who's ready to paskin knew they made a mistake. Halach, if that Dayan went as Alpiyam and paskin like the other Dayanim, Ben Shasu Yasimon, whether he did it with them, Ben Shasu Yasachareim, whether they did it and he did it after them, or whether they didn't do it, only he himself did that. He's a chayv chatas, he's chayv chatas from Neishalei Tola, but Bezdin, because his actions wasn't Tola in Bezdin, because he knew it was wrong and he still did it. Hi, this person that knew that Bezdin made a mistake, who the chayv? He's the only one that's chayv chatas, because his shaygig was not Tola in Bezdin. But another person who did up here Horayos Bezdin, that same Bezdin pot is pot with chatas. Why should it be potter? One of the three Dayanim knew that it's asa. So you don't have all the Dayanim passing the same thing. So how could you say that a regular person who went up Horayos Bezdin, he's going to be potter if you didn't have the whole Bezdin passing the same way? I'm thinking about my skin over here. It's talking about that third dayan who knew it was a mistake, he waved with his head downward in agreement because he made the mistake. He thought you have to go according to the right. Toshma, come in here. In the following in the Mishnah on Dav Dalet, we learned Bezdin Paskin, and one of them knew that he made a mistake. And he said to the other dayanim, "Toyin aten, you guys are making a mistake." Then the potter from a pa helam dava says, "You want to time it? Toyin aten." The whole reason why that potter from a pa helam dava because he said the fetish, you're potter. He says toyin aten. Well, what's if he would have kept quiet and he wouldn't have said anything? Chayav is chayav. And he would have completed the why? Even if he kept quiet, but you're saying even if he kept quiet, he didn't pass with them, you say that they're going to be chayv b'pa helam dava, but l'chayda they didn't all pass him. And here also we're going to explain that he nodded with his head in agreement. Rabbi Shasha is from Rabbi Yonason from the Brais. Some rabbis say not to Rabbi Shimon Gamliel. While the Rabbi Lazar Rabbi Tzaddik Shahayim, and that they would say, "Ein guys and say that you don't put a decree on the tzibur only if the Rebbe tzibur could hold by it, like they wanted to make a geseda not to eat meat and drink wine because of the havelis of the churban, but it wasn't a geseda that everybody could hold by, so the geseda wasn't decreed." Micro, what is this pasuk that we learn out that you need everybody to be able to abide by it? Over there it's talking about the Navi Malachi was telling off the Bnei Yisrael that you're not giving Tumas and Maises and you're stealing from Hashem. The Hashem feels that you yourselves accepted the Me'era, it says Goy Kulei, and at the end you're not following up. So you see, you need everybody, when it says Goy Kulei, most of the people to agree to the Gzeda. And it doesn't mean Kulei, it means Reiv. To Yufta Rabbi Yonason, to Yufta Rabbi Yonason said the Kol means all of them. Hella, so if it's Rubi Kulei, my Kol Adas. So it's a good kasha. So my Kol Adas, the Kamer Achmana, why does it say Kol? And the Gemara Hachakama. If everyone is sitting, all of the dayanim are sitting, then it's a psak. But if not everybody is sitting, it's not going to be considered it's not going to be like a psak to be able to bring up a helam dava. Rabbi Yeshua said, 10 people who are sitting in Bezdin. There's a chain on all these people. Who are paskening, and they have to make sure they're passing l'amitim. Pshita, no chiddush. Even if there's a student before his teacher, and he knows his teacher is making a mistake, and he can find schusim on this murderer, and he doesn't say a word, he gets punished. When Rav Huna would go out to Bezdin, he would bring 10 Talmidim Chachamim from the Beis Medrash to sit with him and be mishtatev in the psak. In order that he should be able to take a piece off this beam that's coming to his neck. Meaning that it should be divided, if Chas V'Shalom there's something wrong, it should be divided by 10. And it will be much lighter. When there was a shayla of Trefis, he would bring 10 shachtim from this ear, from the city of Mas Mechasya. And he would have them sit with him. In order that only part of the responsibility of my psak should be on top of me. Not all of it. Zag the Mishnah, Bezdin made a erroneous psak, and were mata something that's also, and Reb Hatziva did al PM, the chateau, and then they realized they made a mistake with Chazbehem, and they retracted. Bein Shekhiu Kaparasam, Ubein Shadan Leheviku Kaparasam, whether they brought the pile of Dava or not, the Halach, and then there was this Yachid Vas al PM, and still continued after they retracted and brought the carbon. He continued doing like the Bezdin said. Reb Shimon Potter. Reb Shimon Potters him from Machatos. Reb Elazar im a Safik. Reb Elazar says it's a Safik if he's chayiv or not. He brings a Hashem Toli. A Zo Safik. What's a Safik that you chayiv Hashem Toli? Yashav Abba Sich Beisa. He was sitting in his house and he didn't hear about the retraction. Chayiv is chayiv Hashem Toli. Since he was able to find out, Halach Leilim didn't say Yam, but if he went outside the country, Potter is Potter, because there's no way of him finding out that the Bezdin retracted. I'm if somebody went didn't say Yam, she will cut and he's Potter from Hashem Toli. Amalei Ben Azai said to Rabbi Akiva, Maishna, how is this case of going to Medin Sayyam different from somebody who's sitting in his house? So the Mishnah answers, it was possible for the hair Bezdin retracted, and therefore he's chayiv to bring Hashem Toli. But the one that went to Medin Sayyam, wasn't possible that he should hear that Bezdin retracted. Zog the Mishnah, if Bezdin paskin to uproot one of the Yisurim of the Torah completely. Ain't need about Torah. There's no such a thing as a need in the Torah. There's no such thing of a Yisur Shabbos HaTorah. Or ain't Yisur Avitzchap HaTorah. There's no such a Yisur of serving idols. Then the Bezdin does not bring a Pahelim. But if if they paskin to be Mevatel part of this and be Mekayim part of this, they're Chayim. Ketzad. How is a case of bittul mixes or key mixes? Against Amru, for instance, they said yes, need about Torah. There is such a thing as need about Torah. First 7 days of her Torah, she sees blood, she has to wait 7 days. She goes to mikveh, then she has 11 days. Which, if she sees blood a day or two, all she has to do is keep 1 day of Torah, and then she can live with her husband. If it was 3, then it's a Zava Gedolah. If it's 1 or 2 days, it's called Ziba Ketana. But it's 3 days, and which it's Yom Shemeres Yom. You only have to have 1 day of Tara. But if it's 3 days, then she has to have like a Zav Gedayla, start over the 7 days. So he says this whole concept of those 11 days, Shemeres Yom Kineged Yom, he doesn't hold of that. The Bezdin said it's non-existent. That part of the Isa of Nido. Or yes, Shabbos Vateri. They said there is such a thing. Of Shabbos, one who takes out from Shabbos is going to be Potter. Then he says, yes, so he's saying that's not a malacha. Or yes, they say there is this of serving idols, it's Aser. But somebody who's bound to have the son is Potter. All these cases are chayiv b'pahel, like it says in the pasuk. V'nelam dava, only Dava was excluded from the Isa. Not the Ika of the Mitzvah. My time to Reb Shimon. What's the reason that Reb Shimon Pat is a Yachid that follows the Hira of Bezdin even after they retract it? So since he's following the Shus of Bezdin. The Hira of Bezdin. Ikadami others say, every Hira of Bezdin, that was Nispashit, to the Reiv of the Tzibur, meaning the Reiv of Tzibur did this Aveda. Yachda is a potter. A Yachid that does it, he's potter from a Chatas, even if the Bezdin retracted. Lefi Shalei Nit Mahira, because this halacha of Hira was that he's going to be potter from a Chatas, is El Mishum Lahaftim and Shegel Amazing. In order to differentiate, here between a sheikh, somebody who's amazed, it is different than a sheikh. He was a sheikh before because he followed the Hira of Bezdin. Or he wants to say between a sheikh and somebody who's amazed, he's doing the Aveda amazed because he's following the Hira of Bezdin. In such a case, he's part of Mechatas. That was the purpose of the Hira of Bezdin. Okay, Beisvei, they asked us from the Braisa, Pahalam Dav Shal Tzilu, Usili Avedis Vichavim, Betchila Gerim Aleim. They go out and collect from where? So he says they collect from every individual money for the Pahalim Dava. They take it from the general kuppah. Why did Reb Shimon in the Mishnah say that the Yachid is potter from Achatos even if the Bezdin retracted? He knows that they retracted. Even the governor If Reb Shimon holds that they collect from every individual, so he would have been notified. They're collecting for the Aveda that they caused the Yidden to eat chaylev, and they made a mistake. So he should have realized that Bezdin made a mistake by asking him for money. So he was notified. Why would it be a part of a mechatas after Bezdin retracted? And if you want to by saying when they collected, they weren't saying specifically for what sin they're collecting. So therefore he didn't know. He by saying going to have a like masa. Or another answer is at the time of the collection he wasn't even in the city. And if you want, I can tell you, really, Reb Shimon was the one that said you collect from the Trumas Halishka, and Rabbi Yehuda was the one that said you collect from the individuals. So therefore, Vatchila gave them the hand. They were Rabbi Yehuda. Reb Shimon, I remember Trumas Halishka in Bayim. They collect from Trumas Halishka. So if they collect from Trumas Halishka, they're not telling anybody about anything, about any sin. So therefore, he is going to be potter, because he was never notified if they're collecting the money for this Aveda from the Trumas Halishka.